on airplane mode. I did. Why is it still doing things? Okay. Welcome to Let's Be Frank. I'm Ali.
And I'm Herman.
And today we're going to be talking about something that we've brought up in the past 3 podcasts that is very important, and it's communication. And as we mentioned in some of those other podcasts, we're probably going to have quite a few conversations around this, and we're not going to cover everything in our one today. But I feel like it's something that is super important and that we often don't get right. And we fall into bad habits, and as much as we try to change it, we end up going back to the way things were done before. I want to talk a little bit about how we do it here and why we do it the way we do it, and what the goal is, what we're trying to achieve, and how we would like to do it.
So what are the bad habits that you think we fall back into?
Well, I think from watching some other podcasts and things, one of the things that we do a lot of, which we've noticed is not very well received, is emails. So we've mentioned this before. One of the reasons that we're doing this podcast is also for an internal communications kind of trial, something that we're trying to do to see if it works. So we used to send quite a few emails, and we found that we sometimes felt like we were hitting our heads against a wall and people weren't reading them and people weren't responding to them. So trying different ways to get people to respond and to get the messages we're trying to send across.
Yeah, but email has its place though.
I agree. I love emails. I'm far more an email person than a telephone person. I love emails with everything. When I talk to service providers and clients and everything, I much prefer to do it over email. I just find that I can get my thoughts across more clearly, and I can really think about it and make sure that I've said what I wanted to say and gotten that across in the right way.
But we do we do a lot of one-on-one conversations as well, or
we encourage it as well.
Yeah, we encourage it, the one-on-ones, and also as teams to get together, because there's something about the verbal communication which adds another dimension that you cannot always get across in email. So I think that's one of the important things to try and remember is, when do we use which medium?
Yeah.
Because communication, if you look at the definition of communication, it's about imparting or exchanging information.
Yeah.
And that can be speaking, writing, or several of the other tools.
Yeah. Like this.
Like this, but also in terms of the other tools that we use. There are a number of tools that we use to try and make sure that everyone is informed, on the same page,
and has access to the information.
And has access to the information. Yeah. I think one of the other things where I feel that we get it wrong, and I'm sure many other organizations have the same struggle, is that we often feel that communication is something that happens one way.
Yeah.
As opposed to, last week we spoke about, or maybe 2 weeks ago, we spoke about leading up the hierarchy.
Yeah.
So the importance of communication from all levels. So, in terms of FitFo, our methodology, and the importance of the 3 C's that we spoke about last week. Clarity. Clarity says communication.
Yeah.
Says making sure that you are clear about what it is that we're communicating about. And I find that often that's where things go wrong. Is communication goes out.
Yeah.
People are unclear. They're not 100% sure how that applies to them. But instead of asking clarifying questions, see this clarifying questions, so clarity again. Instead of asking clarifying questions, people make assumptions
Yeah.
Or they just keep quiet and hope that whatever they decide to do is the correct way.
Yeah.
So in terms of other tools, we have distributed office. So it's not that easy for us to have one-on-one conversations. You mentioned you prefer email rather than phone. I think a lot of our people prefer to not pick up the phone and talk to somebody. And I don't quite know why.
Well, I also find that in a developer context, which is what a lot of our guys do, obviously, is you often get very focused on the work that you're busy with, and to be interrupted by a phone call or someone standing over your shoulder can sometimes be a bit frustrating. So I do think that there might be a case for having a chat format where you first say, are you available for a chat? And then being able to go and give them a call or go and speak to them at their desk once they've agreed that they can talk about it in that time. So I feel like there also needs to be a level of politeness, or that you need to set some boundaries about when you can interrupt someone.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we try and do is we try to set up certain regularly scheduled meetings that will obviously enable that communication.
Yeah.
Make sure that, so for example, our daily update meeting.
Yeah.
We use a combination of Trello and a meeting where all the accountable members of the teams get together for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, give feedback, raise any issues and concerns, and that should take us, that should sort things out for the next 24 hours at least.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that you can't speak to somebody during the day. But you did mention, the interruptions, the taking away of focus. And I read a lot of articles about how people feel about open plan offices. Some say it's great, it encourages people to talk to one another.
And we do see that happening.
We do see
office,
that.
Yeah.
But then there are also those who say, well, you know what, there's just way too many disruptions. And rather than think something through for themselves, people will just rather go ask somebody else.
Yeah. So that's something we also want to discourage people asking before they've actually looked for themselves and seen if they can figure it out. You must always see what you can do first, and then when you find that you've hit a wall or you're not able to progress further, find the right person to speak to. And we spoke about that with our organogram, that you are able to talk to whoever you need in that context to help you along.
Absolutely. And I think is another very important element of communication that we don't emphasize enough, and that's the listening part. So when you're in a meeting or when you're in a conversation, listen with the intent of hearing what the other person says, and not trying to very quickly make up your mind about what it is that I'm going to say after that. So when we listen properly, it'll enable us to, first of all, ask those clarifying questions, to understand the intent or the context. I believe context is extremely important. And we often underplay that, as I said.
Yeah.
Because we communicate, and then we find that, well, you know what, that was misinterpreted or misunderstood.
Context,
but nobody raised
yeah.
Any concerns or questions at the time.
Yeah. Well, this is again where we really need to encourage that two-way communication. It's not just a top-down or, from the accountable person to the rest of the team. Everyone needs to be communicating, and everyone has a part to play in that process.
So what are some tips to improve?
Well, one of the things that I was thinking about, and you just touched on it now with the context, is something that we've also spoken about, you and I, in our one-on-ones, is this idea of repetition, that you need to keep telling the same message over and over again, because not everyone is on the same page. And sometimes, I've said this before, I feel like we're irritating people by telling them the same thing too many times. But actually, maybe for me, because you and I have so many one-on-ones, and because we talk about it on an ops level and we talk about it on a strategy level, it feels like it's so much. But for a lot of the rest of our team, they don't have the exact same context, and they don't hear it as much as I do and as much as you do. So it's not really flogging a dead horse. It's just a little reminder all the time.
Yeah, I think that's a valid point, and as you said, we've spoken about this quite often.
Yeah.
If we can just get to the point where we know that people will tell us when they feel that we're flogging a dead horse, that will help
a lot. It's probably better
to
over-communicate than to under-communicate, again, to provide that context that not everyone has.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there are many examples of people who believe that you have to repeat yourself, especially when it comes to things like values, direction, goals.
Our way of doing things, the FitFo way.
Yes.
Yeah.
We have to absolutely make sure that is reinforced.
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean that we have to just send out the same email every week. It is about, highlighting certain areas and making sure that we keep the focus where we feel it should be.
Yeah.
I think the other important thing is also, and we'll get to that when we chat about one of the elements that we mentioned in FitFo, which is extremely important. We touched on it last week as well, the 5 dysfunctions of a team.
Yeah.
It is the fear of conflict. And Patrick Lencioni has a very good explanation of why he uses conflict and not discourse or any of the other words that may sound a little bit less confrontational, because conflict doesn't have to be a bad thing.
Yeah. And he refers to it as conflict in pursuit of the truth, which is what we're trying to achieve. Is we're trying to find the best solution or the best outcome, or that's the reason for the disagreements.
Yeah, and I think if you listen, especially in a case of conflict, if you listen with empathy and if you listen with open-mindedness, and you listen with respect, then I think that conflict will definitely improve communication.
Yeah.
It's not about criticizing the person if it's in pursuit of the truth. It is about a particular way of doing something or what needs to be done that the conflict is about.
Yeah.
It's about making sure that we pursue our values and making sure that we stay true to who we are as an organization.
Yeah.
It should never ever be personal.
Yeah.
And then conflict can be very healthy and invigorating.
And a very important part of communication, as you've just said.
Correct.
And then the one other thing that I wanted to say about communication is that we need to be clear, not try to make the messaging too complicated. And I have a little funny anecdote about that. Is one of our team members the other day made a statement to us about a feature we were building, that it was exactly the same as another feature we'd seen, but a little bit different.
Yes.
I thought that was quite a funny way of showing how you can be unclear in your words. And so just to try and focus on that clarity, as you've mentioned so many times, just say what you mean and mean what you say. And then on the other side of it, the two-way part is, if you're not sure, ask the question and get to what the real meaning of the statement or of the information is.
True.
Yeah.
Get to the point.
Yeah.
Again, clarity. Don't ramble. I think we lose a lot of value of communication when we sit in a meeting, and the meeting was scheduled for half an hour. We could say what we have to say in 10 or 15 minutes, but because we have half an hour allocated, we drag it out.
Yeah.
So we don't want to be rude, but I think it's important in making sure that there's clarity and making sure that we respect other people's time, that if we do have meetings, and we try to cut those down to as little as possible,
Yeah.
this is that we are to the point.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that's also quite important about the verbal communication, and about why we prefer to sometimes have meetings, even when they VC type meetings,
Yeah.
is the importance of body language that you can pick up on. You can see the other person or people's reactions, where in an email it's not that easy
Yeah.
to determine,
Yeah.
how a specific statement or message was received.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, we are done with our first little chat about communication. I think we're going to go into a bit more detail about some of these things that we use, such as email, such as our internal chat thing. I think we need to talk quite a bit about Trello and how we use it, and how it should be used and how it could be used. But yeah, this is Let's Be Frank About Communication Part 1. The
Thank
rest
you.
coming soon. Thank
Yeah,
you.
coming soon.